Hello, Holistic Chamber of Commerce family. Welcome to today's member. Oh my goodness. So Giovanni the cat is helping this morning. Welcome to today's member spotlight. I have the privilege of speaking with Meredith Maiolo, and she's going to be talking about how to use music to unlock answers within. A little bit about Meredith. She's a board-certified music therapist that teaches music therapy techniques to help her clients look inward for the wisdom so they can heal and find hope. This sounds beautiful. I'm so excited for this conversation. Welcome, Meredith.
Hello. Glad to be here.
So let's start out with what exactly is music therapy?
So music therapy is actually a formalized, structured intervention that requires a lot of training. So we know music can be very therapeutic, but there's actually a little bit more to the components of music therapy. So I think there right now are about 9,000 of us in the country, which is pretty exciting that we're growing. But we go through a 4-year accredited program where we study not only the classical music components, but how your brain, your body reacts to music. The psychotherapy components, counseling techniques, verbal processing, how we help people get to the root of things, because we know music is going to bring stuff up. So then what do you do with it, right? So the music therapy component is then taking that in a healing direction for someone. So we go through 4 years of school. We do 1,200 clinical hours where we're training and practicing with lots of different modalities. Music therapists sometimes work with individuals on the autism spectrum, developmental disabilities, all the way to, I work personally end of life right now. Some music therapists do traumatic brain injury work. So actually, Gabby Gifford is a really great example of the senator who experienced a traumatic brain injury after a shooting. She actually relearned how to speak through melodic intonation therapy, which is a music therapy modality. Because you're using different parts of your brain when you're singing versus when you're speaking. And so there's lots of different applications for how we use music therapy. And then we go through an internship where we really sit down and we specialize for 6 months. And then we take a wonderful board certification exam to where they say, you've passed all the boxes, you know all the things that you need to know, go out and put good into the world. So I am coming up on I'm on my second recertification cycle now, on my 6th year of practicing. And I'm just very passionate about helping people utilize these tools that we have around us that we feel so connected to, and really take things a lot deeper for folks.
So let's debunk a few myths, because I can just see some people watching this like, well, I don't play an instrument, I can't do music therapy, or I don't like classical music, so I can't do music therapy. So let's get rid of that right off the bat.
Yes. So off the bat, you do not have to play any instruments. I am definitely the one that is trained on lots of different instruments. And sometimes it's not actually the live music. So your brain does hear live music differently than recorded music. But there's certainly a place for recorded music. I've had sessions before where we've been trying to release something, and I went to Goodwill and we got a bunch of plates and we wrote down all the crap we were trying to release and put on our rage playlist. And she was breaking plates. And at the end, it was just a huge release. And she was able to have these bits of insight that were coming up because her anger got out of the way. We let the anger speak for a minute, and then something else came in. So it really is about how you're using music and sound, and you don't have to have any sort of relationship with the technical pieces of music. It's just about your personal relationship to music. So I've actually done Metallica at the bedside of someone who was dying. Surprise, surprise. You never know what music is going to connect with someone. So that's part of what I'm trained into, is getting to know you. What is your style of music? How are you relating to music? How do you make meaning? And how do we make that tangible, right? Because music is this tangible thing. So it's not scary. We tiptoe in. There's opportunity to drum and to improvise on the piano. But certainly there's a lot of techniques where you're just sitting back and receiving music and having a more receptive rather than recreative experience with the music.
I like that. It sounds very customized, because, music is pretty subjective. Like, what sounds wonderful to one person to someone else could be like nails down the chalkboard. So, it sounds like you definitely tailor the musicality to your specific client's preferences, interests, and then also needs.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. How did you get into music therapy, out of curiosity?
It's actually a very interesting story. I had done a lot of music in high school and was the show choir, band kid, done all the symphony orchestra. But I was dead set on going to law school. I don't know why I had it in my head that I was going to go into political science and go to law school. And it was my senior year of high school. And I woke up one morning from this like epiphany of a dream. I was like, I just want to help people and I want to make music every day. And I don't know what that's going to bring. That very same day, I was in choir class with a classmate whose brother had a pretty severe form of autism. And they said, oh my gosh. And I went to school in West Virginia. So music therapy really did not have much of a foothold there. And they said, my brother just got set up with a music therapist. And I said, music therapy, what in the world? And I found the program at Radford University, which was an hour and 45 minutes down the road from my house, and met up with Jim Borling and got to know a little bit about the music therapy program. I said, I don't know what this is, but I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. And I took a leap of faith and I jumped across the border into Virginia and signed up for the music therapy program at Radford. And that's really what started helping me see this beautiful tool that we have that really is, I mean, it really can be the key. So for some people, they don't quite have that relationship with music, but I'd say for 90% of our population, music is just so prevalent in our life. The happy birthday, right, gets sung at every single birthday you have, the wedding march. Music just has this vibrancy that connects us to our experiences and not only tethers us to this world, but actually sends us up into something greater and bigger.
Yeah, it's such a great opportunity for people to try, because with any kind of therapies, whether it's, related to psychological or holistic, not everything works for everybody. So it just gives yet another outlet for people who are like, oh, I've done the talk therapy and it's just not working for me. And, maybe they can't articulate what it is they, need to speak. I'm assuming there might be some dancing involved. I don't know, but when you got music,
oh yes,
sometimes you got some grooving going on.
We say music with a capital M, right? Movement, music, yeah. whatever needs to happen there. It's about really freeing yourself and allowing yourself to express authentically.
Right, right. So how does music help to unlock these answers within? Because that's the name of your segment here.
Yeah, so I think sometimes the answer is already there, and sometimes we have a hard time putting language to that. So I think a lot of the times that we're experiencing really complex emotions, a lot of the times we just don't know what we're feeling, right? We're operating in this horizontal way of, I've got bills to pay, I got to go to my job, I got to get the kids ready for school, I got groceries on the list. We've got this world that we live in, and we don't always have opportunities to go vertical, right? And music is that thing that helps us go vertical and help us connect with all parts of ourselves, right? We can hold multiple emotions in the same hand at the same time. And that's a really unique thing that we don't often get to experience or we get permission to do in our everyday worlds, right? You get to be one thing and then move on from that, and then you can be something else. We don't often get times or permission in our world to be both happy and sad at the same time, to be both sorrowful and angry. And it's hard to find ways that encompass all of that, right? Words can't always sum up the true expression of how we're feeling, right? But sound can do that. Music can do that. There's malleability and adaptability within that we can start out in a really angry place. And once the anger is released, now it's becoming softer, right? So now what does that softness mean? What does that now take us into? So it's about listening to yourself and listening to what you need and allowing yourself that permission and malleability to go along your journey and not get pigeonholed or stuck into one thing because I need to figure out what this anger is, right? Well, let's just be in the anger for a little bit. Let's just let it out. Let's start playing the drums and see what's coming up for people. So that's one way that we find answers within. Another way that I'm very passionate about is a technique that I'm still training in, guided imagery and music. So I'm actually working on towards my level 3 training, which will be the final training for GIM. But GIM is a phenomenal technique about getting yourself into an expanded state of awareness. It almost kind of looks like some meditation, but you're much more engaged. And there's certain classical music programs that evoke certain things within the psyche. So you have an intention that you're setting, something you want to explore more deeply, you want to focus on or understand more about yourself, and really surrendering to the process and surrendering to your psyche, getting into that place where you're allowing the music to lead you. And so people start imaging in different ways. Some people, when they're listening to the music, they have very visual images. They say, like, oh, I'm walking along this path and I'm just seeing butterflies swarming around me. What color are the butterflies? They're yellow butterflies. What does that mean for you? Yellow reminds me of my grandma. So there's certain ways that we image, and we're going through this process internally within ourselves, that symbolism starts coming up, right? Some people, they image very physically, very kinesthetically. So it's like, oh, I feel really uneasy right now. Okay, stay with that. Let's get into the uneasy, right? So the answers that we're seeking, they're there, but the things that keep us safe to keep operating in this world, we kind of put caps on. And we say, don't want to deal with that right now. That's not really something that keeps me safe. And so we kind of push it down. It doesn't go anywhere. It's going to want to keep coming up. It finds little holes to kind of creep out and manifest in our lives in ways that we wish it didn't. And that's, I think, what sometimes people start seeking this type of therapy for, is to go inward and to do that shadow work and to look at those parts of ourselves and maybe look at things that have happened in our past that we don't have conscious memory of. It's really about getting into the unconscious state of mind and into that collective unconscious as well, and do those parts work and do that reparenting or whatever is needing to happen in that moment. But the key is the music is going to bring all that up for you, right? It's your psyche, it's your stuff, and it's something that makes sense to you and is personal to you. And I'm there as the guide to help pull that out and to make sense of what does that mean in the reality for you, and then what's the insight that you receive from that? Because we all have such strong insight within us. It's just about how do we tap in and listen.
I think that your role as the facilitator is so important in this, because yes, we can use music to release, and some people watching this might be like, well, if I'm angry, I'll just put on, some loud music and punch and dance or whatever and release that and be like, oh, I feel better afterwards. But what we don't often pay attention to, like we often can't see our own like dysfunction in a sense. And when you are guiding people and they come up with imagery, you know what to look for or to cue them to dig further, whereas we often don't do that on our own. So I would think having a facilitator for this is like the key component to healing.
Mm-hmm. And also when you're in that, we call it non-ordinary states, an expanded state of awareness, altered state of consciousness. Some people actually have a really hard time remembering, right? Because you're so in that experience, you're so into the surrendering of that process and letting your internal self and your psyche speak to you, that it's, I just lost my train of thought because I heard my bird chirping in the background there. I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought with that one. But
these darn animals.
Darn animals.
Yeah.
Needing attention.
Well, I was just saying that, like, being a facilitator and having a facilitator is a key component of the healing process, because we can't see our own stuff.
Yes, it keeps us grounded. And it's also the witnessing of that, right? So we're taking things that maybe you've never looked at before. We're not even talking about things you haven't spoken out loud. Some of this is stuff that you've not even wanted to look at. I remember one of my first GIM sessions I'd done personally, I dropped into a black pit and I had a flashlight and I was like, I can't really see a whole lot because I wasn't ready to see, right? I needed to shine my flashlight on one thing at a time and slowly start to build that relationship and that trust within myself. And so my guide, my therapist, was there to act as that witness and to witness me coming into myself and me speaking my truth and me being my most authentic self. And there's some beauty in that, right? Because that's all we ever want. The human soul, I think there's a beautiful quote. The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or changed. We simply want to be witnessed exactly as we are in that moment.
And to be able to just express our truth.
Yes.
Freely. Imagine that. A world where everybody can express their truth freely.
Right. So sometimes we need a safe space to do that and practice that. And as we build that confidence and build that personality and develop that more, we take that out into the world. And we start to walk those steps a little bit more confidently.
What does it look like to work with you? Do you have like a set amount of sessions that you work through, or is it more like a half-day experience? Like if someone's like, hey, I would like to investigate it, what would that look like for them?
So I work in a lot of different ways. There's certainly opportunity for us to just do kind of like a one and done session if you really just want to, get a taste for what music therapy might look like for you, what it might bring up. But I think music therapy tends to work best on a long-term setting. So like any talk therapy, counseling, psychotherapy you may be doing, setting that, I want to say like contract with yourself to say, I'm going to continue to do this work, can be the most beneficial because you're really allowing yourself to really like peel that onion back one layer at a time, I think is what I'm getting to, right? So we can look at the whole onion and get a good picture from just one session. But if you really want to start peeling back the layers of the onion to make whatever you're making with it, the consistency with, once a month or, once a quarter, every so often as you need it. And when you feel like you're getting stuck, I think is the most important part. When you feel like what you're doing for your self-care isn't working, it feels like you're ruminating on something, you're replaying a certain situation that you've tried to move through and it's just not budging, feeling like you can't get out of that stuck pattern that you're in, I think that's when you really start seeing the benefit of the consistent music therapy support.
And do you work mostly with people in person, or do you work with them through Zoom or virtually?
So it just depends on what your specific goals are. So if your goal is more, I want to embrace my, my core self and express myself, and you're interested in doing more of the drumming and the improvisation, that would be something that would work best in person. But certainly if we're doing things like the guided imagery or music and imagery, guided meditations, mindfulness, and the talk therapy components, those certainly work really, really well virtually, long distance. And even if we're just using recorded music like that session I was talking about at the beginning where you're writing down plates, you can certainly do that from home and have your own music playlist while we're on a Zoom and counseling through that process for you as well. But I do work mostly with individuals in the state of Virginia because that's how my liability insurance pans out for right now. So as long as you're in the state of Virginia, I'm able to work with you either virtually or in person.
Mm-hmm. Well, and maybe if someone has a question about this, I don't know the extent of your contacts, but you might be able to support people in finding somebody in their own state if they, just have a question about, hey, this is interesting, but I live in California.
Yeah, we are a very close-knit network. So there's tons of our Facebook group. So you're welcome to reach out to me and I can help push you and people in your direction. But I'm always happy to I have a free 15-minute consultation on my website that we can sit down and talk about what exactly you're hoping to gain from this experience and gain through your work. And we can decide whether virtual would work really well for you or in person may be more along the lines of what you're needing, just from my clinical perspective.
And too, if you're in, like, I'm in Maryland, so I know like Maryland, the DC area, we're all very close to that border. So it's often not, too far of a distance just to kind of hop on over to a different state in this little area.
Roanoke has a lot to offer.
So speaking of a consult call, you have a couple freebies. I'm going to put your website address in the chat here so that people can click on it. But talk about what they can also download off your website.
So I have a couple different downloads for free. One I think is most interesting for you all is going to be the guided meditation. So I actually have, it's about 8.5 minutes of me guiding you through a mindfulness mind-body scan. So there's some gentle music that kind of just floats along the background to keep you grounded and anchored in that experience. But it's really about giving yourself a few minutes of the day to stop and feel your feet on the ground and really practice focusing on what you're feeling in this moment, right? And letting it be as is. I also have a download for caregivers of individuals that have dementia on ways to use music and connecting with that loved one that has dementia.
Thank you so much, Meredith, for sharing your magic, a little bit of your magic here with us today. For anybody that is tuning in, please reach out if you have any questions. If you have, oh, I'm afraid to do this because, please let Meredith know, because again, there's a lot of myths, and when we want to explore something new, sometimes we can talk ourselves out of it. So don't let that stop you. So thank you so much, Meredith. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in.